2024, Marshana Struggs, a 29-year-old woman, was on the brink of a new life. In the heart of Houston, Texas, she was making over $7,000 a month on OnlyFans, carving out a future for herself and her young child. A future she had worked tirelessly to build. But as her success grew, so did the shadows lurking behind her. What seemed like a simple request from her boyfriend would soon ignite a deadly chain of events. When the man she loved demanded a cut of her earnings, something she had worked so hard to earn, everything changed. The pressure mounted. Tensions escalated. And soon, her life would be shattered. This is the tragic story of Marshana Struggs. A story that highlights how control, entitlement, and obsession can turn into something far darker. This isn't just about money. It's about power, manipulation, and the devastating consequences when those lines are crossed. Before we dive deeper into today's chilling case, we want to take a moment to engage with you, our viewers. If you find our stories impactful and want to help support the growth of our channel, please take a second to subscribe. Subscribing ensures that you're always updated with our latest content, and it helps us reach a larger audience, allowing us to continue bringing you fresh crime stories and detailed analyses every day. We genuinely value your thoughts, so feel free to leave your comments below. Share your views on this case, and don't forget to tell us where you're watching from. It's always fascinating to see how far our stories reach. By liking, sharing, and commenting on our videos, you play an essential role in expanding this community and raising awareness. Your participation makes a difference. Thank you for being part of this journey. Now, let's continue with the story. Born in 1994, in the quiet, close-knit community of Marrero, Louisiana, Marshana Struggs, affectionately known as Merm by her friends and family, grew up surrounded by love and support. Raised in a home where family bonds were strong, she learned early on the value of hard work and determination. Marshana's parents instilled in her the belief that no matter where you come from, you can change your destiny through resilience and persistence. From a young age, Marshana showed a fierce independence. She wasn't one to rely on anyone else for her dreams. She was determined to make something of herself, to rise above the small-town life she was born into. Her days were spent focused on school, finding joy in the little things, but always looking ahead, always dreaming bigger. Though she had everything she needed emotionally, her circumstances weren't always easy. Marrero, Louisiana, was a working-class town, with its own set of challenges. But Marshana's spirit was never dampened. She knew that the key to breaking free from the cycle of poverty was education, hard work, and ambition. Every step she took was with the goal of building a better future for herself, and one day, for her family. As she grew older, her dreams only got bigger. She wanted to leave behind the hardships of her hometown, to build something of her own. A future where she could be free, successful, and provide for the ones she loved. But despite her resilience, life had different plans. She could never have predicted the tragedy that awaited her, or how the very success she worked so hard for would lead her down a dangerous and unexpected path. That future. But she could never have predicted the tragedy that awaited her. After high school, Marshana knew she had to leave the confines of her small town behind. The dreams that burned brightly within her could not be realized in the narrow streets of Marrero. So, she made a bold decision, a decision that would change the course of her life. With nothing but hope and determination, Marshana packed her belongings and moved to Houston, Texas, in search of a fresh start. Houston, with its sprawling cityscape and endless opportunities, seemed like the perfect place to carve out a new life. But the reality of starting over was far from easy. Despite her best efforts, Marshana struggled to find steady work. The financial pressure began to build, and her dreams seemed to slip further from her grasp. But giving up was never an option. She had a child to support, and she wasn't about to let her circumstances define her. That's when Marshana discovered OnlyFans, a platform that offered the freedom she desperately needed. It wasn't just a way to make money, it was a way to take control of her future on her own terms. She wasn't interested in the traditional 9-to-5 grind. Instead, she saw this as an opportunity to build something unique, something that allowed her to express herself while securing the financial stability she so desperately sought. With grit and determination, Marshana dove headfirst into the world of content creation. She set boundaries, ensuring that she would only engage with her audience online, never compromising her safety or values. Slowly but surely, she began to build a community of loyal fans, each subscribing to her page to see her exclusive content. Her account began to grow, and so did her income. With every new subscriber, Marshana's confidence soared. She wasn't just making money, she was building a business. A business that would provide for her child, a business that offered her the independence she had always dreamed of. She wasn't just surviving in Houston, she was thriving, determined to create the life she had always envisioned. In the midst of her growing success, Marshana found herself drawn to someone new, Nicholas Finley. At first, he seemed like the kind of man who could complement her life. He was supportive, attentive, and appeared to understand her ambitions. Their conversations were light, filled with laughter and shared dreams for the future. Marshana thought she had found someone who could be by her side, someone who would uplift her as she navigated this new chapter in her life. But as the days turned into weeks, Marshana began to notice subtle changes. What once felt like affection started to take on a more possessive tone. Nicholas wanted to know where she was at all times. He asked about every person she interacted with, constantly questioning her whereabouts and her conversations. At first, she brushed it off, thinking it was just his way of caring for her. But soon, the questions became demands. Nicholas began to expect answers, not out of concern, but out of control. It was no longer about love, it was about possession. Marshana tried to shrug it off, convincing herself that maybe it was just the nature of their relationship, that maybe he simply cared more than others. But as his behavior grew more controlling, she began to feel the weight of his expectations pressing down on her. Then, things escalated further. Nicholas started to challenge the way Marshana ran her business, the very platform that had given her the freedom and independence she cherished. He wanted to know who she was talking to online, who was engaging with her content, and even began to dictate what she could post. What was once her creative space, a place where she could be in control, was now being shaped by someone else's demands. He tried to convince her that if she truly loved him, she would change the way she worked, alter her boundaries, and make compromises that she wasn't willing to make. What started as small signs of possessiveness slowly morphed into emotional manipulation. Marshana found herself questioning her own worth, her decisions, and the future of a relationship that seemed to be unraveling before her eyes. She tried to ignore it, to push through the tension, but deep down, she knew something wasn't right. The man who had once seemed like her biggest supporter was now acting like a cage, trapping her in a toxic cycle of demands and control. As Marshana's OnlyFans account flourished, so did her financial independence. With each subscriber, her earnings grew, and with that growth came a newfound sense of freedom. She had worked hard to create a space that was entirely her own, one where she could set the rules, maintain her boundaries, and control her income. But as Marshana's success continued to rise, so did the pressure from Nicholas. What started as small requests for financial help soon turned into something much more troubling. It wasn't long before Nicholas began to feel entitled to a portion of the money Marshana was making. At first, it was just a simple question. He asked her to share some of her earnings with him. Marshana, taken aback, was hesitant. She had worked tirelessly to build her platform, and she was determined to keep the money she had earned. She refused, thinking that the issue would pass, that perhaps it was just a moment of uncertainty for Nicholas. But it didn't end there. As time passed, his demands grew bolder. He began to insist that as her boyfriend, he had a right to a larger share of the income she was generating. He argued that he was part of her life, part of her success, and therefore deserved a cut of the money she had earned. What once seemed like an isolated request quickly escalated into an ongoing battle over control and finances. Nicholas didn't seem to understand the amount of work, creativity, and dedication Marshana put into her business. She had built her account from the ground up, and to her, it was a symbol of independence. It was more than just money, it was a reflection of her hard-earned success, the result of her decision to take control of her life. But Nicholas was relentless. His sense of entitlement became more aggressive, and he began to make threats. Marshana, who had always prided herself on being self-sufficient, found herself at an impasse. She was determined to remain in control of her own success, to protect the future she had worked so hard to build, but Nicholas wasn't willing to take no for an answer. The tension between them continued to rise, and what had started as a small disagreement over money was now threatening to tear apart the very foundation of their relationship. As the days passed, the tension between Marshana and Nicholas grew unbearable. With every argument, his behavior became more aggressive, his demands more unreasonable. What started as small signs of possessiveness escalated into something far darker. Nicholas began to use emotional manipulation, constantly telling Marshana that if she truly loved him, she would comply with his wishes. He twisted her feelings, making her question her own actions, pushing her to doubt herself. The arguments became routine, intense, frequent, and often fueled by Nicholas's jealousy. He wasn't just upset about her success, he resented it. He saw her independence as a threat, and the more successful she became, the more controlling and possessive he became. Marshana, who had always prided herself on her ability to stand on her own, found herself trapped in a relationship that was becoming more toxic with each passing day. Every time she pushed back or tried to assert her boundaries, Nicholas grew angrier. His jealousy began to take on a dangerous edge, and he became more possessive, trying to isolate her from the world she had built. Marshana tried to ignore the warning signs, to push through the emotional strain, but deep down, she knew something wasn't right. What was once love and support had turned into manipulation and control. She began to feel more and more suffocated by Nicholas's demands, but the moment she tried to break free, his behavior turned violent. On July 19, 2024, Marshana reached her breaking point. The relationship she had tried so desperately to make work had deteriorated into something unrecognizable. The final confrontation began like so many others, but this time, the stakes were far higher. Nicholas demanded that Marshana hand over $7,000, the money she had worked so hard to earn on OnlyFans. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about control, about his belief that he was entitled to what she had built. Marshana refused, as she had many times before. But this time, Nicholas didn't back down. In a moment of terrifying clarity, he threatened to kill her. The words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of his obsession. Marshana, in sheer panic, realized that this time, he was not bluffing. Desperate to escape, she bolted from the car and ran into the parking lot of their apartment complex. She was frightened, knowing that if she stayed, she wouldn't be able to outrun what was coming. Her heart raced as she tried to find safety, but she knew that Nicholas was right behind her. The adrenaline in her veins pushed her forward, but she couldn't outrun the danger that was closing in. Marshana knew she had to get away, but the fear of what was about to happen was all-consuming. As she ran through the parking lot, hoping for some kind of shelter, she could hear Nicholas's footsteps getting closer. Her only hope was to escape the man who had once been her partner, but now seemed intent on destroying everything she had worked for, everything she had built for herself and her child. With fear gripping her every step, Marshana ran through the parking lot, desperate to escape. Her heart raced as she tried to outrun the terror that was closing in on her. Her only hope was to find shelter, to hide long enough for the danger to pass. She reached a neighbor's car, hoping for safety inside, but Nicholas wasn't about to let her go that easily. He was relentless. As Marshana attempted to seek refuge, Nicholas's fury only grew. Without warning, he caught up to her. There was no hesitation, no remorse, only a cold, deadly resolve. In that moment, Nicholas pulled out a gun and fired. The first shot rang out, followed by several more, each one striking Marshana at close range. She had no chance to defend herself as she collapsed to the ground, her life slipping away in that quiet, deadly parking lot. The man who had once claimed to love her had now taken everything from her. When the gunfire stopped, Nicholas didn't pause to look back. Instead, he stole her car, adding insult to injury, and fled the scene, leaving Marshana's lifeless body behind. The man who should have protected her had become her executioner. Within minutes of the shooting, law enforcement responded. The Harris County Sheriff's Office launched a full investigation into the tragic events that had unfolded. Neighbors, still in shock from hearing the gunshots, came forward with crucial information. Many had witnessed Nicholas's erratic behavior and had even heard him threaten Marshana before. The pieces began to fall into place, and it didn't take long for investigators to identify Nicholas Finley as the prime suspect. As the investigation unfolded, it became clear that Marshana had been trying to escape a relationship that had turned dangerous, a relationship built on manipulation, jealousy, and control. Her decision to refuse Nicholas's demands for money had been the breaking point, a decision that ultimately cost her life. In the hours that followed, a manhunt was launched. Nicholas, who had fled the scene after committing the brutal act, was quickly apprehended. Law enforcement caught up with him, and he was arrested without further resistance. Nicholas Finley was charged with capital murder, the crime of taking a life over something as trivial as money, yet in the twisted mind of his obsession, it seemed justified. The cold brutality of his actions sent shockwaves through the community, leaving those who knew Marshana to grapple with the heartbreaking reality of her loss. The loss of Marshana Struggs reverberated far beyond the parking lot where her life was stolen. Those who knew her, those who loved her, were left grappling with an overwhelming sense of loss, disbelief, and heartbreak. To her family, she was more than just a daughter or a sister, she was the cornerstone of their hope. To her friends, she was a beacon of kindness, warmth, and loyalty. Marshana was the woman who had worked tirelessly, day and night, to create a future not just for herself, but for her child. Her ambition was never about wealth, it was about providing a life of opportunity, security, and love. She had dreams of a future where her child could grow up free from the struggles she had faced, a future she would never see. Her family, in particular, felt the blow of her tragic death the most. The emotional toll was profound. Marshana's mother, devastated by the loss of her only daughter, struggled to comprehend how someone so full of life could be taken away so violently. In the days that followed, her community came together to honor her memory. A vigil was held, a place where friends, family, and even strangers who had followed her journey, gathered to reflect on the life she had lived. The night was filled with tears, but also with celebration, a celebration of the joy Marshana brought into the world, the warmth she shared, and the lives she touched. Balloons were released into the sky, each one carrying a silent message of love and remembrance for a life cut far too short. Marshana's death serves as a heartbreaking reminder, a cautionary tale of how emotional and financial manipulation in toxic relationships can turn deadly. A reminder that no one should have to live in fear or feel trapped by someone who should have been their partner in life. The loss of Marshana Struggs is a loss felt deeply, but it is also a call to acknowledge the dangers that lurk in relationships, especially when control, manipulation, and jealousy take hold. Marshana Struggs was more than just the image she presented online. She was a mother, a daughter, a sister, and a woman with dreams for a better life. Her online persona was only a small part of who she truly was, a woman who worked tirelessly, with love in her heart, to give her child the best life possible. Marshana was not defined by her platform, but by her strength, her warmth, and her determination to break free from the limitations of her past. But her tragic death serves as a painful reminder of how quickly control, entitlement, and jealousy can spiral into violence. Marshana's story is not just about a toxic relationship gone wrong, it's a stark warning of the devastating consequences that can unfold when manipulation, emotional abuse, and the hunger for power take hold in a partnership. No one, regardless of their circumstances or their success, should ever have to fear for their safety in a relationship. Marshana's death is not just a loss for her family and friends, it's a loss for us all. Her story will forever stand as a reminder of the importance of recognizing the signs of emotional and financial manipulation, and the dangers that can lie behind a seemingly supportive relationship. Let it serve as a call to action, to protect those we love, and to intervene when we see toxic behavior unfold before our eyes. Marshana Struggs was a vibrant, ambitious woman with so much more life to live. Her dreams were stolen, and her potential was cut short by someone who should have protected her, but instead chose to destroy her. The pain of that loss is immeasurable, but her story is now one we carry with us, a story that will not be forgotten, and one that can hopefully prevent others from suffering the same fate. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe and hit the notification bell for more stories like this. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you or someone you know is experiencing domestic abuse, please seek help. You're not alone.